Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Nun Zayin, Daf 57 of Masechta Yoma. A bunch of stuff in here. Nothing so crazy, but there's a few different things. So what are they? One of them is kind of technical about the Hekesh, whatever. We'll get there. Learning the korbanos from the inside, from the outside. All right, we'll get there. And then the sprinkling of the blood on the paroches. We talk about blood that got mixed together, cups that got mixed together, blood from cups that got mixed together, stuff like that. But it sounds complicated, but it really isn't so complicated. I mean, you know what? Just stick with me, and it'll be okay. What does it say? Lo ira kiata imadi. I will not fear any evil because you're with me. So don't fear any challenging stuff because you're with me, okay? I gotcha. I don't know if it's a good... Alright, let's go back there. Alright, weiter. So, where are we? Right. Okay. Here we go. We're on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph 2, 4 lines from the top. Got it? Good. Let's go weiter. Okay, what does that mean? Okay. When it comes to the blood of the goat, and when it came to the blood of the cow, things weren't I shouldn't say weren't super clear, but it doesn't say that you sprinkle it by the goat below 7 times. It says that by the cow. It doesn't say that you sprinkle by the cow once above. It says it by the goat. And we have to learn out one from the other, right? Because it says, right, v'asa kasher asa l'dam apar. So we learn out that because we do it in the same way, that is how, so we have to compare the goat and the cow in order to learn out different halachas by the goat and the cow respectively. And therefore, if the only way that we were able to learn out the halachas of the achas lemala v'sheva lemata by the goat and by the cow respectively was already through a hekesh, was already by comparing those two, can we then take it one step further and say that, what does the pasuk say? The pasuk says, v'chein yaisa le'omoid asher chinitam b'soch tumosam. And so too, like you did in the Kodesh HaKodashim with the blood of the goat and the cow above and below, do the same thing for the paroches. Do the same thing in the heichel. So if we only learned out the halachas of the goat and the cow in the in the Kodesh HaKodashim through a hekesh, through learning out one from the other, and now we're taking it one step further and saying, and now we're going to learn out what happens in the heichal from what happens in the Kodesh HaKodashim. Well, can we juice this that far, so to speak? Can something that was already in the first place only learnt out through a hekesh, through comparison, can we then compare that to another thing and learn that out from a comparison of something which itself was only learned out through comparisons? You get it? It's kind of like twice removed already. So, fact the Gemara, can something that itself was only learnt out through comparisons, so right, like the blood above and below of the cow and the goat, can they now become the source, the basis to learn something out from them? To say that now we'll learn out how you do the blood of the goat and the cow in the heichal from how you do it in the Kodesh HaKodashim, which itself was only learnt out through comparing the goats and the cows? So the Gemara answers, well, Haye menu v'davar acher hu v'lo ave hekesh. So the Gemara says, well, this isn't quite a hekesh. What happened in the Kodesh HaKodashim, the comparison between the goat and the cow, wasn't really a hekesh l'maaseh. What was it? Well, the truth is, we already knew, right? It already says in the pasuk, both by the goat as well as by the cow, that you have to sprinkle blood above and you have to sprinkle blood below. We needed a little bit of clarification with some numbers. That was about it. We needed to know that the below of the goat is 7 and the above of the cow is 1. Details. But the fact of the matter is, the Gemara wants to argue The pasuk already had said both by the goat and by the cow that you need to sprinkle blood. You have to sprinkle blood above. You have to sprinkle blood below. Some of the details we filled into a hekesh, but that wouldn't really be considered a hekesh, and therefore it's not like we're taking something that itself was only learned out through a hekesh and now learning out something else from there. Don't get carried away. It wasn't really a hekesh. We already knew most of the stuff. Some details we filled in, but that wouldn't be considered a hekesh to be a problem of learning out learning out something via hekesh, which itself was only learned out via hekesh. That this wouldn't apply here. It's not so clear cut though that this concept of heimenu v'davar acher would not be considered a hekesh. Right? We just wanted to argue that the fact of the matter is all the 90% of the details were already there. 90% of the halachas by the goat and by the cow were already there. A few details we learned out from a hekesh, and that doesn't count as a hekesh. But what about according to Man Amar that says that it does count as a hekesh? How do you answer according to that Man Amar? Because it would seem then that we're learning out the blood of the cow and the goat in the heichal from the Kodesh Kodashim, which according to this Man Amar itself was only learned out through a hekesh. So the Gemara answers Mikomis hu degami me'adadi. So the Gemara gives two answers. The first one is that Mikomis hu degami me'adadi, that they're different, right? Meaning the hekesh in the Kodesh HaKodashim was learning about the animals themselves, right? The goat, the cow is the goat. The goat, there's one above, 7 below. The cow, there's one above, 7 below. These are details about the goat and the cow. Over here, we're not comparing anything to a goat or a cow. We're comparing the heichal to the Kodesh HaKodashim. And therefore it's a different hekesh. It's apples and oranges. Okay, so let's read that again. In this case, we're only learning out the places one from the other. We're learning out the heichal from the Kodesh HaKodashim. Whereas the original hekesh was between the cow and the goat. Or if you want to say chutz mipnim b'chadazimna gomer. That's an interesting answer. Another way to explain this is that, well, technically speaking, we're only learning out the stuff that's actually written in the Torah, right? Meaning, when it came to the cow and the goat in the Kodesh HaKodashim, so certain things are written in the Torah explicitly, such as that by the goat you sprinkle one time above, and that you also sprinkle below. We just didn't know how many times, but we know that by the goat you sprinkle once above and also below. We know that by the cow you sprinkle above. We don't know how many times, but that you also sprinkle 7 times below. There were certain things that were written explicitly, and then other parts were learned out through a hekesh. How many times you sprinkle by the goat below? 7. That was learned out in a hekesh from the cow. How many times you sprinkle by the cow above? Once. We learn out from the goat. So certain things were written explicitly in the Torah. Other details were filled in through the hekesh. So now says the Gemara, what's happening here between the heichal and the Kodesh and the learning out from the Kodesh HaKodashim is that we're learning out the things for the heichal from the things that are written explicitly in the Kodesh HaKodashim. And once already we're learning those out, so then we could schlep along the things that also were learned out from hekesh. So if we only wanted to learn out the thing, if we only wanted to learn out for the heichal from the Kodesh HaKodashim, just the things that were learned out from a hekesh, that would be a problem, because you can't take things learned out from a hekesh and apply it to another hekesh, right? So if we only want to learn out the parts of the heichal of the Kodesh HaKodashim that were learned out in a hekesh, we wouldn't be able to take that and then apply it to the heichal. However, the Gemara says no. What we're doing is we're really just learning from the Kodesh HaKodashim to the heichal the parts that were written explicitly. And then once we're already learning the parts that were written explicitly, we can also chaparine and schlep along the parts that we're learning off from the hekesh as well. But it's not a classic case of taking something explicitly only learned out through a hekesh and applying it to a different place, to another hekesh. Alright, that's the end of that technical part. Tanik shu maze no maze ala prochas ala keneged prochas, says the Gemara. When you do these hazos, when you sprinkle the blood on the parochas and the heichal, right, the separation between the kodesh and the kodesh HaKadoshim, you don't actually throw blood on the heichal, you throw it on the floor in front of the heichal. Amar Rabbi Elazar b'Rabbi Yosef ani risiya b'Romi v'haya alea kama tipe damim shapar v'ser shom HaKippurim. Do you hear that? Chevra, do you hear that? Mitaka saw a similar Gemara in Masechta Shabbos. I forget what daf now. Somewhere around like Samach, I think, or something. It could be off Akoponim. So Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi says that Hitaka saw the parochas in Rome. You hear that? Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi saw the parochas of the Beis Hamikdash in Rome, and there was taka shtik of blood on it from the animals of Yom Kippur. Again, Amar Belazar Rabbi Yosef and he received Romi, and on Gemara Shabbos says that Itaka saw the tzitz of the Kohen Gadol in Rome. Apparently it's a Gemara Me'ilah. Also, apparently I learned Masechta Me'ilah, and I don't remember this. Apparently I didn't learn it that well. Amar Belazar Rabbi Yosef and he received Romi. Itaka saw the prochas in Romi. Vayu Allah aleh kamatipe damim shopar v'sel shem Kippurim, and there were a few drops of blood on the parochas that got in the parochas from the blood of the cow and the goat of Yom Kippur. V'dilma depayr l'mdavar shel tziv v'sir avodah zara havu dechaza. Fact, the Gemara, how does he know that the blood that he was seeing was necessarily from the pyre v'sir shel Yom Kippur? Maybe it was taka from a pyre l'mdavar shel tzibur. Right, that when the Sanhedrin makes a ruling, and then the Tzibur does some halacha, does something based on that ruling, and it turns out that it was a mistake, so they bring what's called a parallel davar shel Tzibur. We see avodah zara, or if similarly the Sanhedrin ruled that something was allowed, and it turned out that it was avodah zara. Also, there was a special korban that was brought. So the blood also would be sprinkled in the heichal. So maybe the blood that Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi saw in the parochas was taka from the Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur, the Sir of Avodah Zarah. How does he know that it's taka from the Par V'Ser Shel Kippurim? So the Gemara answers the Avide Kisidron. Well, he could see that the blood was specifically in a particular order, right? We said that the blood on Yom Kippur was kimatzlif. It was like, further and then getting closer. So he saw that it was in that pattern, so therefore Memele, it must have been from Yom Kippur. V'tnanami ki agavna. No, did I skip? V'tnanami gav parlam davar shel tzibur ki agavna. And we also have a similar dialogue when it comes to the parlam davar shel tzibur. Kishu mazel lo ayu nogim parochas, when he would sprinkle the blood of the parlam davar shel tzibur, they wouldn't actually touch the parochas. V'im nagu nagu, but if they touched, they touched. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi says Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi, and he received Romi. I saw the parochas in Rome. Vayu alea kamatipe damim, and there was a shtickle blood on the parochas shel parlam davar shel tzibur v'shel v'sir avodah zara, and there was a little bit of blood on the parochas from the parlam davar shel tzibur and the avodah zara goats. V'dilma depar v'sar shel Kippurim ninu dechazinu, or maybe ninu. How does Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi know that they would dafka from the Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur and the Sir Avodah Zarah? Maybe they would taka from the Par V'Ser Shel Kippurim. So the Gemara answers the Chazanu Ta'avide Shelo Kisidron. Well, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi saw that they weren't in a particular order, and if it would have been the Par V'Ser Shel Kippurim, they would have been in a particular order. So it must have been from the Par Elam Davar Shel Tzibur and Sir Avodah Zarah. Very interesting. So that version was a shtickle different. The first version, he claims to have seen the blood from the Sa'ir and the Pyre of Yom Kippur, whereas in the second version, Hitaka concludes that it's the blood from the Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur and the Sir Avodah Zarah. What if the blood got all mixed together? The blood of the goat, the blood of the cow, all got mixed together, L'maisa. Amirava, so Rava suggests, Nosin achas l'mayla v'sheva l'mata. What he does is he simply takes all of the blood with him into the Kodesh HaKodashim, and he sprinkles 1 above, 7 below, ve'olelo l'chanu l'chan. And it works since all the blood is mixed together. So by sprinkling the blood once above and 7 below, so then it works for the goat and for the cow. They said this in front of Rabbi Yirmiyah. They said Rava's suggestion in front of Rabbi Yirmiyah. Amar, what do you think Rabbi Yirmiyah said? Pavloe tibshoe, the silly, foolish Babylonians, mishum dedayir ba'ardach shocha, amishmaita demechashchon, because they live in a dark land, they say dark teachings that are wrong. Hakayoiv lemayla desire mikama mata depar. Let's read that again. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, but hakayoiv l'mayla desar mikam mata depar. That according to Rava, all the blood is mixed together, so he just sprinkles the blood above and 7 below, and that works for the par and the sire. But Rabbi Yirmiyah says, 1 second. There's an order that things have to happen. First comes the blood above of the par, then the blood below of the par, then the blood above of the sire, and then the blood below of the sire. Says Rabbi Yirmiyah, if he's just sprinkling once above and once below and it counts for all of it, well, that means that Memele, when he sprinkles the blood above, it's the blood of the cow and the goat. And then when he sprinkles the blood below, it's the blood of the cow and the goat as well below. Which means that you could think of it as Kilu, he's sprinkling the blood of the cow above, and then the blood of the goat above, and then the blood of the cow below, and then the blood of the goat below. But that's not the order. The order is that it first has to go the blood of the cow above, then the blood of the cow below, then the blood of the goat above, then the blood of the goat below. Not cow above, cow below, goat below. Got it? Good. Let's go weiter. Let's read it again. Hakayoyev l'mayla desoyer mikama mata depar. That if what Rava is saying is true, then that means that he's doing the sprinkling of the blood above for the goat before he does the sprinkling of the blood below for the cow. V'atorah amra, and yet the Torah says v'chila mikaperes hakodesh, that it will complete doing the blood work of the par in the Kodesh HaKodashim. Kalei dam hapar v'achar kach kalei dam hasoyer. First, do the blood of the cow above and below, and only then do the blood of the goat. Elam Rabbi Yirmiyah, rather Rabbi Yirmiyah suggests no sin achas l'mayla v'sheva l'mata l'shem apar. Rabbi Yirmiyah suggests no. In this case, where all the blood got mixed together, you do the blood above and the blood below for the cow. And then you go back and you do 1 above and 7 below for the goat. And that way you did the 1 above and 7 below for the cow, followed by the 1 above and 7 below for the goat. And everything was in the proper order. So now the Gemara gives an interesting case in this Arvelo Domim B'Domim B'Matonis Ha'acharonis. I don't know exactly how this would happen, but apparently he sprinkled the blood of the cow in the Kodesh HaKodashim. And at that point, somehow the blood got mixed together. The blood of the cow and the goat got mixed together at that point. I don't know how, because I thought the goat essentially wasn't even slaughtered yet. I don't know. But he had the blood of the cow in the Kodesh HaKodashim. And then, unless maybe it's not talking about Kodesh HaKodashim. Can we say that maybe it's talking about, maybe the Akataka makes sense. Maybe it's talking about the paroches. So he sprinkles the blood of the cow on the above. And then and then the cow and the goat blood gets mixed together. Okay. Sover of Papa Kame de Rava Lemema. So Papa was in front of Rava, his Rebbe, and he wanted to say, no sin sheva lemata l'shem par u'l'shem sayer. So he already did the blood above for the cow, and then everything got mixed together. So just sprinkle the blood 7 times below, and it'll work for the cow and for the goat. And then sprinkle it once above for the goat. Right? So you sprinkled already once for the cow, and then everything got mixed together. So sprinkle 7 below, and it'll count for the cow and for the goat, and then just fill in the missing blood for the goat above. Amle Rava. Rava says to Rav Papa, hey, they already called us fools. Now they're going to call us, I don't know, what's like a step worse than fool? Reb Dennis, what do you say? Foolish fools. That sounds pretty foolish. Because they're going to say, we try to teach them and they don't even learn. Rava says, but if you do that, Rav Papa, if you put the blood below 7 times and say it works for the cow and the goat, that means that Lemaisa you're doing the blood of the goat below before you're doing the blood of the goat above. Because you're putting the blood below and it's going to count for the cow and the goat, and only afterwards you're doing the blood above for the goat. That's out of order. The Torah says first you got to put the blood of the goat above and only afterwards below. Says Rava, rather what he does is he puts the blood on the sprinkles it 7 times below for the cow. And then he sprinkles above with the intention of the goat, and then below 7 times with the intention of the goat. Everything's in its proper order. Everybody's happy. Givaldig. Nisarvilo kosis bekosis. What if the blood itself didn't get mixed together, but the cups got mixed together? Okay, some of the utensils got mixed together, alright? So now he's not sure which one is the blood of the cow and which one is the blood of the goat. Alright? Nosein v'chosa v'nosein v'chosa v'nosein shlosha paimim. So what he does is, he does the 1 above and 7 below 3 times. He's got 2 cups. He's not sure which one's the goat, which one's the cow. So what he does is, he does 1 above, 7 below. And he does, right from, the first kli. And then he does 1 above, 7 below from the second kli. And then he goes back to the first kli and does 1 above and 7 below. And then if the first one was the cow, so then after already he did the first time and the second time, he's yaitzazan. Because he did, the first one was the cow, and he did 1 above and 7 below, and then the second one was the goat, and he did 1 above and 7 below. Then the third one was what wasn't necessary. And if the first one was of the goat, well then the first one, this 1 above and 7 below, counted for nothing because it's out of order, but then the second one, which was the cow, 1 above, 7 below counts, and then the third one, which is the goat now, 1 above and 7 below counts as well, and so Shalom Yisrael, everything is good. Miktsas damim nisarvulo umiktsas dam lo nisarvulo. Okay, moving on. What happens if you have 3 utensils? So one of them has the blood of the goat, one of them has the blood of the cow, and in the third one they got mixed together. Alright? Pshita ki yoiv mivadoy and yoiv. So obviously, meaning, and he knows what's what. He knows that, let's say, the container on the right is the cow's blood, the container on the left is the goat's blood, the one in the middle is the mixture. So obviously, pshita, it's obvious, ki yoiv mivadoy and yoiv, that obviously when he places the blood, when he does the sprinkling of the blood, he's going to be doing it with the bloods that he knows what they are. Not the mixture. Miu, however, Hanach shirayim avu v'liyisod azle, odoma dichuyin avlu fazle la'ama. What the Gemara wants to know is that while it's obvious that you're going to do the sprinkling with the blood that you know which one is which, but what about this mixture? What about the combined bloods? Do we treat them like the remnants of the blood? That, whatever blood is left over after the avoda, so he spills it on the yisod, on the sort of bottom part of the mizbeach. So is this counted as just leftover blood that he would spill on the mizbeach? Or maybe this is considered like invalid blood, essentially, unusable blood. And therefore, you wouldn't spill them on the bottom of the Mizbech, you would spill them in the Amma, in the stream that runs through the Azara that basically washes away any psolas, anything that you have to get rid of. So what do you do with this mixture of the blood in the third cup? Do you spill it on the bottom of the Mizbech, or do you spill it or do you pour it into the Azara drainage system? Amar Papa, says our Papa. Well, afilu l'man de'amar kos achas osa chaveru shirayim. Even according to Man Amar, if for example you have a korban chatas and you have to apply the blood on the mizbeach, and however the blood was received in two separate vessels, and all the blood that you're going to apply into the mizbeach, you use it from one vessel and you don't use the second vessel at all. So even according to Man Amar, who says Kos echad osa chaveru shirayim, that by using one cup and ignoring the other cup of blood, that other cup of blood is considered leftover, and therefore you would pour it on the base of the mizbeach. However, in that case though, if he wanted to use the second cup, even though he didn't, but if he wanted to use the second cup, he could have, it was completely valid. So Rav Papa wants to argue that is why he would spill the second cup on the mizbeach, even though he didn't use it. Aval hai di'ibay lemesav lo matziyav lo. But in this case, where the blood got mixed together, where this isn't blood that he would use the blood that he knows for sure what it is. Therefore, says Rav Papa, even according to Man Amar, who says that the cup of blood that he doesn't use by a regular korban, you'd be able to spill on the Yisod Mizbeach. However, in this case, since you wouldn't even use this blood because it's a mixture, I would spill it in the Amma. Rav Yeshua says to Rav Papa, Adrabah, I'll argue the opposite. That according to Man Amar, who says that in the case when you receive the blood of the animal in two cups, for like a regular korban chatas, for example, in two separate cups, and you only applied on the mizbeach from one of the cups, and you ignored the second one. Says Rav Huna bar Rav Yeshua that there's an opinion that the second one is considered no good, dachui, pushed off, and you would not spill it on the bottom of the mizbeach. You would pour it down the Amma, down the Azara drainage system. But in that case, the reason why you would pour it down the Amma is because you explicitly ignored it. You specifically used one cup and did not use the other cup. That's why, since you pushed it off, showed that you weren't interested in it, that's why you pour it down the Amma. But in this case, where you didn't push it off, you didn't indicate that you don't want to use this blood, it just got mixed together with other blood, and that's why you're not using it. If you didn't do it intentionally, so maybe then I'll argue that this blood that got mixed together in a third cup, you would be able to pour on the mizbeach and not have to pour it down the Amma. The Tanya is, we learned in a brayso that we're going to see these two positions. One position being that the blood that you don't use is shirayim, whereas the other position is that the blood that you don't use is dachu, is pushed off. The Tanya is, we learned in a brayso lemailo omer. On the one hand, we have a pasuk by the Parkoin Anasi, that when the ruler sins, so then he brings a special korban. So it says, "V'ez damu yishboch," that whatever blood is left over, he spills on the mizbeach. Ulumato omer, and it says by a korban chatas, "V'ez kol damu yishboch," that all of the blood you're going to spill on the mizbeach. So one pasuk says that it's blood, and the other pasuk says all of its blood. Mirayin lechatos shekibel dama ba'arba koses. How do you know that if you have a korban chatos and you receive the blood of the korban chatos in 4 cups, v'nosen mizeh achas u'mizeh achas, and so the blood of the chatos you put on all 4 corners of the mizbeach. So you give each cup equal attention. You put on this corner of the mizbeach from this cup. You put on the second corner of the mizbeach from the second cup. You use all 4 cups. Shekula nishbach in the yisod, all the leftover blood you are then going to pour from all the 4 cups onto the bottom of the mizbeach. Tamlom ves kol dama yishboch, as represented in the pasuk of ves kol dama yishboch, that all the blood you spill out on the yisod of the mizbeach. Yochel afilu nosan arb matanos me'achas man. But what if you applied all 4 corners of the mizbeach with the blood from just one of the cups and you ignored the other 3 cups? Is it possible that in that case you would also spill all of the blood on the yisod of the mizbeach? Tamlom ves damu yishboch. Well, that's what we learn out from the first pasuk of ves damu yishboch. It doesn't say kol damu yishboch, to teach us that hu nishbach li yisod v'hei nishbach na'ama, to teach that in that case not all of the blood is spilled on the yisod of the mizbeach, only the blood from the cup that he actually used for the putting the blood on the mizbeach. All the rest of the cups you would pour down the amma in the azar. So we see, according to this opinion, that the blood that is not used is dachui, is pushed off. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer, minayin lechatas shekibul damu b'arba koses. How do I know that when you have a korban chatas that you receive the blood in 4 cups? V'nosan arba matanos me'achad man, and you applied the blood to the mizbeach, all 4 corners from one of the cups, and you ignored the other 3. Shekula nishbach in the yisod, that nonetheless all of the blood is spilled out on the yisod of the mizbeach, even though you ignored 3 of them. Tamlom ves kol dama yishboch, as the pasuk says, well, all the blood you're going to spill out, even the ones that you ignored, you'll spill on the yisod of the mizbeach. But what does he do with that first pasuk of ves damu yishboch, which seems like it's making some kind of exclusion? It's to exclude, says Rav Ashi, to exclude the leftover blood in the neck of the animal that you don't put on the mizbeach. That you would, I guess, it would go down the amma, whatever blood was there. Okay, so we see that there's 2 opinions about what happens to leftover blood. Is it poured on the mizbeach, on the yisod of mizbeach, or is it poured down the amma? And we, so we see it's machlokas between the Tanakam and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Papa and Rabbi Huna ben Yehoshua wanted to make arguments based on that, how that would apply to blood that gets mixed up in a third kli. Do we treat it as though it's pushed off and therefore it would be spilled down the amma, or do we treat it as though it's leftovers, in which case it would be poured on the yisod of mizbeach? That was daf Nun Zayin, daf 57 of Masechta Yoma. We learned about a whole number of things. At the beginning we were discussing hekesh, right? That if we in the first place only learned out the blood above and below of the goat and the cow through a hekesh, how can we then learn out another hekesh and apply that to the blood in the azara by the parochas, but in the heichal by the parochas? So one way was to say, well, it's not really a hekesh, because it really says already by the goat and by the cow that you have to put blood above and below. There were details, numbers we learned out, but it's not really considered hekesh. However, there is a mandarma that says that it would be considered hekesh. So according to him, he answers it by saying that, well, first of all, we only learned out the places, meaning the initial hekesh by the goat and the cow was learning about the goat and the cow. This has nothing to do about the goat and the cow. It has to do with learning the heichal from the Kodesh HaKodashim. So those are places, not animals. The other way to understand it is that what we're learning out for the heichal from the Kodesh HaKodashim is just whatever's written in the Torah. Because after all, there is already stuff written about the goat and the cow in the Torah. Only details were learned out by hekesh, and those details we could schlep along. Then we learned about that we also do the sprinkling of the blood by the parochas, not on the parochas itself, but near the curtain dividing the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKodashim. We discussed what happens when the blood itself gets mixed together. There was the suggestion of Rava that you just apply above and below and say that it works for the goat and for the cow. Rabbi Yirmiyah called Rava a fool and said, but you're doing the blood above of the sire before the blood below of the par, and that's out of order. So rather, Rabbi Yirmiyah says that actually what you do is you apply the blood above and below for the cow, and then apply the blood above and below for the sire. What happens when... then there was the case of like the blood got mixed together after the top. Okay, that was also a similar suggestion. What happens when the cups get mixed together? So now we're not sure which one is the cow and which one is the goat. So we say that you have to do the blood 3 times, right? Once above, 7 below, 3 times, because then you'll cover all your bases, and memela you will be yaitza. What happens when the blood gets mixed together in a third cup? So you have the blood of the cow in one cup, the blood of the goat in another cup, and then in a third cup there's a mixture. So in that case, definitely use the blood that you know for sure what it is. But the shaila is, what do you do with the mixture? Rav Papa wants to argue that you would pour it down the drain of right down the amma. And Rav Huna bar Yeshua wants to argue that you would spill it on the yisod of the mizbeach. Chevre, that was the afternoon zayin of Masechta Yoma. I hope you enjoyed it very, very much. Cheers.